Welcome back to the Bill and Doug Show. A great night of college football. Bill Landis. We had the Oregon-Penn State game on the big screen. We had Alabama-Georgia on the second screen. Huge wins for Alabama and Oregon on the road. Georgia loses the longest home winning streak in college football at 33 games. Washington lost the second longest streak at 22 games. And the longest home winning streak now belongs to the Oregon Ducks, who just won at Penn State.
Oh, wow.
And you and I were discussing this because you and I were there for a game 11 years ago in Happy Valley that is so reminiscent of this Penn State-Oregon game that it's practically the exact same score.
Yeah.
And it is Ohio State winning at Penn State in double overtime in a game that was tied 17-17 at the end of regulation, just like this Penn State-Oregon game was. In that game, Ohio State scored first in the overtime. Penn State matched it. No, that's wrong. In that game, Penn State scored first in the overtime. Ohio State matched it. Then Ohio State scored in the second overtime, and then Joey Bosa ended the game with a sack.
Correct.
In this game, Penn State scored first in the first overtime. Oregon scored in the first overtime. You and I thought Dan Lanning would go for two to try to win the game right there. He did not. Oregon scores easily in the second overtime, and then Dylan Thieneman on an interception. It's 30-24. Back then, it was 31-24 Ohio State, because back then you didn't have to go for two when you got to the second overtime like you did here. Let's talk about it from the Oregon perspective first, because we have a lot to say about the Penn State perspective. That game, in a lot of ways, fueled, man, there's a lot of similarities, fueled that national championship run for Ohio State. They had lost to Virginia Tech earlier that year, but like the year before, they had been right there and lost in the Big Ten championship game, just like Oregon was right there last year. Urban Meyer, like a successful head coach, but looking for rocket fuel for a national championship contender, and there might not be any better rocket fuel in college football than winning in Beaver Stadium.
I don't know that there's better rocket fuel in the Big Ten, especially. Yeah, and it's not like Ohio State went through the rest of that 2014 season and ran everybody on the field. They did have some close games after that. They played at Minnesota and had to win close, but that was a watershed moment, I think, for that team and sort of the confidence it had in itself, the confidence that it developed in itself to then go on and win a national championship. And I would imagine this does something similar for Oregon. I don't know that we're sitting here now on September 27th saying Oregon's going to win the national title, definitely. But I think Dan Lanning as a coach, still very early in his tenure, had to answer some questions about an ability to win a game like that. Obviously, they beat Ohio State at home last year. He had not really won a game like that on the road yet at Oregon. And of course, like the last time people saw Oregon in a matchup game, they kind of got run off the field against Ohio State. So it was more of a prove-it situation for Penn State, and they came up short. Obviously, we'll talk about that, but it was a fairly large prove-it situation for Oregon as well. And to do it in that stadium in that fashion, I think will fuel them on to bigger and better things. But I don't know that either of us are surprised by that, right? We knew Oregon was a good team coming into this, but there is a certain I don't know, feeling of what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know what the word I'm looking for.
It's proof. It's
evidence. Validation.
Validation is the right word.
Yeah, validation that it is among, if not the most difficult place to go win a game, regardless of what you think of James Franklin. And for Oregon to do that with a young quarterback, pretty impressive.
Because it's hard. You can think sometimes that there are only certain coaches who have bugaboos, right? So that Ryan Day, once upon a time, can Ryan Day win the big game, the playoff run last year, the win against Texas this year, this Ohio State win at Washington? The big game is not a question. Ryan Day still has the Michigan thing. Kirby Smart has 2 national titles. He's 1-7 against Alabama. That remains a thing for Kirby Smart. Dan Lanning, as good as he has been, he's still like he had the losses to Washington in back-to-back years. He has the playoff loss to Ohio State last year. He's won some big games, but this is a very validating win. And then, of course, James Franklin still has all of that he needs to overcome.
Yeah.
But it's not like, as I think, as respected as Dan Lanning is, this remains, and you could see it in Dan Lanning's face, the way he was talking after the game, the way he was celebrating, how much this meant to him and the Oregon program. I do think Oregon, for everything they've been, I think Oregon comes out of this game with this win with a new level of confidence and maybe a different team.
Yeah, and that sort of built on top of being probably the angriest team in the college football based off how their season ended last year, right? So this is just another layer to them and trying to push them to get a little farther than they went last year. But yeah, you don't see a lot of coaches doing the throat slash motion on the sideline. Dan Lanning's was premature, but in the end, he was proven right.
Got to be wary of the premature throat
you
slash.
Do, yeah.
Noah Eagle was trying to tiptoe around it. You were like, Dan Lanning just did a throat slash, and Noah Eagle was like, I believe he just touched his neck. And you're sitting here in my basement saying, that's a throat slash. That's a throat slash. Dan Lanning, the TV post-game interview says, our quarterback is an absolute all-star. Dante Moore, 29 of 39, 248, 3 touchdowns, 10 carries for 35 yards on the ground. No surprise there, but like not really moments where it looked too big for him. Not really moments where he looked harried very much. He is a threat in the run game. You really saw him. We were sort of talking about that from an Ohio State perspective. Both those teams in some short yardage plays were staying in the shotgun and calling some QB power, some QB draw, or they're letting the quarterback make a read and just run it. It's like, oh, how could Ohio State get to that with Lincoln Keenholz or maybe with Julian Sayin at some point, right? But like Dante Moore is such a weapon there. I found it interesting because we're going to talk about Drew Aller and James Franklin. For Dan Lanning to specifically express that emotion, our quarterback is an absolute all-star. That, again, it was a big test for Julian Sayin to go into Husky Stadium on the road, and he passed that test on Saturday afternoon. Dante Moore has played on the road before. He made 5 starts at UCLA 2 years ago. But like to pass this test, I feel like Dan Lanning said our quarterback passed this test.
Yeah, and they felt, or it seemed like anyway, like you watched the Ohio State game in the first half. I think they were clearly trying to not put too much on Julian Sayin, and then when they did in the second half, things opened up. I don't know that Oregon ever felt like conservative with its approach to Dante Moore in this situation. Also, Dante Moore is older and has made more starts than Julian Sayin. This was not Dante Moore's first road start, for instance, so it's not exactly the same thing. But I thought he played incredibly well, spread it around well too. 8 different receivers he threw the ball to, so I never really thought he looked all that rattled. And even like late there, I guess it was an overtime. Like they had that fumbled exchange and a ball got put on the floor.
Yep.
They kept running them. So we said like in our preview, right, coming into the weekend that Dante Moore has not achieved career-wise as much as like Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix. But if you just assess the three different players, there's clearly more in terms of Dante Moore's ceiling than what Oregon has had a quarterback in Dan Lanning's other seasons. So he's still learning. He's still developing. I'm sure he might have moments of struggle, but this was a heck of a performance for a fairly inexperienced quarterback in a tough place to play.
Oregon's not quite as dink and dunk with Dante Moore.
No, I did think that there was not the there have been times over the last couple of years where you would watch Oregon's offense sort of operate with a lethal efficiency, and that's not how it looked tonight. But when plays needed to be made, they were made.
Again, Dante Moore, 29 of 39, 248, 3 touchdowns. To Corian Moore, living up to every expectation as a true freshman receiver for Oregon. 7 catches for 89 yards. Gary Bryant, huge catch at the end in the second overtime for a touchdown. 6 for 55. Kenyon Sadiq, who you believe is the best tight end in the country?
Yeah.
6 for 49. But this is a Penn State conversation. And I think that you and I don't know if learned lessons is the right way, but you come off a game like this and a night like this, and we are going to talk about Bama, Georgia a little bit because I did get my hat. And we do have our swords. Listen, just because the name of the show is different doesn't mean we don't have the swords. Georgia lost. Take that hat off. This is a Penn State story. So there's twists and turns in the Penn State story. The first is they still didn't win. They can't beat the best teams. They still didn't win. This is not going away. This problem was not solved. They are now, I believe, 5. James Franklin is 5-20. No, let's see. 5 and he's 4-21 against top 10 teams now. James Franklin is. Oregon was ranked number 6 going into this game. Penn State fans were booing Penn State. We have a lot of colleagues that we respect who do a great job covering the Penn State-Nittany Lions, and they had reached a point. We were just following their tweets, and we were like, oh, wow. The Penn State beat is out on Drew Aller.
Yes.
They were tweeting things about Dante Moore has never played an environment like this. He's made 8 career starts. Drew Aller's made 33 career starts. How is Dante Moore outplaying Drew Aller? They're getting booed. We are in the territory of, is this the straw that breaks the camel's back? And then Penn State scores 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to send it to overtime. And then it's like, they're back. And then the exact kind of throw that a veteran quarterback can't make in that situation, the exact kind of mistake. It's not dissimilar from the interception that Drew Aller threw against Notre Dame in the playoff semifinal last year to end a game. They played 3 patsies. The last 2 times they played great teams with the game on the line, both games ended with Drew Aller interceptions. So I do think Penn State gained a decent degree of something by coming back and forcing overtime and not laying down. But then a decent chunk of that came back up with the way that ended.
Yeah, it almost all gets like kind of erased, right? Like it's not just a bad throw. And then you watch the fourth quarter and you think to yourself, like, well, that looks all right, Drew Aller.
Yes.
But then you get away from that because they lost, and you go back and assess the entire body of work, and he threw the ball 25 times for 137 yards. He's like, I think I might have said it when we were previewing the game. Like, I'm not convinced he's gotten any better. And in some respects, he looks like he might be worse because he's actually got some decent receivers and he still can't get on the ball. I think there's a larger conversation too about Andy Koltoniki's offense. We maybe don't have to get into right now because it is, I think all the Penn State conversation is going to be about Drew Aller and his lack of progress and the way that he doesn't really show up in these big games. But, you thought for a moment that like after 3 quarters of really bad play, like he might ascend to something different in that fourth quarter. And then he gets the opportunity to march Penn State down for a win and his first pass gets picked off.
So I had said during the course of this, they get down 2 scores. They're down 17-3. And then Drew Aller leads a drive right down the field. And I said, nothing activates Drew Aller like getting down 2 scores.
Yes.
The game a couple years ago in Happy Valley, that was, I think, right. It was his first year as a starter. It was Mike Yurcich's last. Maybe that game was it. No, that game was in Columbus. It was the last game, I think, for Mike Yurcich as the offensive coordinator before he got fired by Penn State, maybe. Maybe he had one more game. But anyway.
That was Clifford.
They did.
22. The JT Tuimoloau game?
No, so the game, it was in Columbus in 23. It's Aller's first year as a starter. They do nothing the whole day, and then they get down 2 scores, and they finally like unleash Drew Aller a little bit.
Oh, like for the last drive. Yeah, it was like
and he leads them right down the field for a score that kind of doesn't matter. Right. And so it's sort of like, man, like when it's over, Drew Aller's like, haha, no, it's not. And I said, okay, well, that he's a down 2 scores quarterback. Can he be a down 1 score quarterback? And then he was. And then they followed the touchdown drive with another touchdown drive to tie it. Now, again, there's some good play calling at the end. And there's a lot of stuff here with Penn State that is the good and the bad all wrapped up in one.
Yeah.
Because Drew Aller is exactly the kind of quarterback who is good enough that you can't give up on him, but not good enough to trust him. And it feels like in this game, the end result might be just keeping Penn State fans on the hook. You can't wash your hands of Drew Aller after this, the way he led 2 touchdown drives at the end of the game. And there are moments, he's 6'5", Landis is thinking about hand washing. There are moments, he's 6'5", where he stands in there and rips a throw, and it's like, that's it. That's everything you want in a quarterback. And then there are, and again, he's good enough as a runner that you can use his physicality to get him downhill a little bit, and he'll do some stuff. And I think he'll stick his nose in on stuff, right? Like, I don't think he's.
Yeah. He'll fall forward. He'll run hard.
But there's too many times where it's not consistent. It's not when you need it the most. And that last pick of, man, that you're not so sure that couldn't have been picked off by 3 different Oregon guys. What even is that throw? It's not even really there. How does he not see the underneath coverage? But even if he doesn't see the underneath coverage, I think the guy running with Luke Reynolds had good enough coverage. Like, how can he make that decision? Penn State fans are trapped. I don't know what the answer is to this other than ride this out through the end of this season and hope for something that feels like is not going to come.
I mean, they're not going to make a quarterback change. I think that I'm not, no one, a Penn State fan or otherwise, I guess, hold your breath for that. This is how Penn State is going to roll through the season, and maybe they'll go back to the drawing board. I think they have another week off before the Ohio State game, as Ohio State does. So maybe they'll try to land on a better plan and a better offense that suits Drew Aller, but they're kind of in year 3 of doing that at some point in the season. And here's another game where like took too long for Penn State to get its receivers involved. And like in the end, they weren't really involved. Devontae Ross scored twice. But one of them was on a run play. He was the leading receiver. And then there was a running back and a tight end and another running back in there. Like Penn State's offense remains in a spot where its quarterback struggles to meet the moment, and it's inverted offense where it has its best receivers or running backs and its best running backs or receivers.
But so it's like, I think there can be, and there's always some frustration with the Andel Koldernicki offense, but then the play call that scores the tying touchdown in the final 30 seconds in the red zone is the kind of red zone ingenuity that like we talk about. Hey, like that's what Ohio State needs to do, right? That really could have been a real grinded out situation. Instead, they run a counter.
Could have looked like their goal line stuff against Ohio State last year where they just ran the running back into the middle of the line 4 times.
Oh, exactly right. And they did learn from that. They said they did learn from that. But like that was a great play call. And then they didn't put it on Aller. It's a little flip was it officially a run?
Yeah, I think so.
So actually it's a handoff to Ross on like a counter.
Oh no, I guess it was
like
a shovel
pass.
Yeah.
But like that's a great play call. And that's like all the best of Penn State coming together. And it's immediately followed by all the worst of Penn State coming together. Now they did score once in overtime, which is credit to them. But it's just so incredibly frustrating for Penn State fans right now. And I feel like, and I was looking up the numbers a little bit on this, because in talking about, it's such a James Franklin conversation, and ultimately the buck stops with the head coach. We know that it should, that's the way it goes. But now that he is 4-21 in these games, these are his starting quarterbacks during this stretch of James Franklin's career at Penn State, where he's 4-21 against top 10 teams. Christian Hackenberg was 0-3. Trace McSorley was 2-6. Sean Clifford was 1-6. And Drew Aller is now 1-6. Points scored per game. Christian Hackenberg scored 12 points per game while going 0-3 in those games. Trace McSorley, 26 points per game. And that includes a huge shootout with USC and Sam Darnold in a Rose Bowl that they lost. That, again, is like probably one of the best losses in Penn State history. You can go on a big stage and play lights out against a great team and lose and feel good about it. Sure. I think that qualifies. Yeah. They also had like the 39-38 shootout with Ohio State that they gave it away at the end, but they also put up 38 points in that game. So Trace McSorley's 2-6, 26 points. Sean Clifford, 1-6, 24 points per game. His only win against the top 10 team was the last game he ever played in the Rose Bowl against Utah. Maybe it wasn't the Rose Bowl, it was a bowl. And then Drew Aller, 1-6. His win is against Boise State in the playoff last year. 22 points per game coming into this. They scored 24 tonight, but one of those is in overtime, so it's 17 in regulation. It didn't move it much. So anyway, my point is this. Christian Hackenberg was a specific kind of quarterback. NFL body, second-round draft pick, stand in the pocket, make throws. Trace McSorley is a classic college quarterback. He's wiggly. He can run. He's a great leader, right? It's that kind of thing. And it feels like maybe in that moment, did you feel like there's a ceiling on the Penn State program? There's a cap if you play with a quarterback like that. We want more. Like when they had Justin Fields as a recruit, it's like, can they get the 5-star guy who can maybe push it down the field a little bit? Now they get Trace McSorley, had Saquon Barkley, had Chris Godwin. Sean Clifford is like a step past. Sean Clifford got drafted. He's in the NFL as a backup quarterback. He's a step past McSorley. McSorley's in the NFL. He's like a special teams wrinkle guy, right?
Yeah.
And now Aller, who people talk about at NFL quarterback, is like a step past Clifford. But really what's happening, and we've had this discussion for many shapes and forms, Bill, I think sometimes nothing can hold a program back like mediocre quarterback play because you can't get away from it. You can't make a change. It's too good to make a change, but it's not good enough to get you over the top. And the other part of this is Penn State twice now has had a backup quarterback who is much more mobile that they used as a wrinkle, but they never decided to go to, who then as soon as that guy left, he looked better than the starter. It happened with Will Levis going to Kentucky with Sean Clifford. It's now happened with Bo Pribula going to Missouri and Drew Aller. Clifford and Aller were never bad enough to make a change, which means Levis and Pribula could never get on the field, and they're both more mobile. They're more wiggly, like Trace McSorley, but Penn State wants more than Trace McSorley, and the result is Trace McSorley might have won this game.
I think it's quite possible that Trace McSorley or a quarterback like him could have won this game. I like Drew Aller can run a little bit. Clearly, he did run a little bit in this game, but he doesn't have. I don't know what's the right word for it. There's like an X factor kind of quality about a McSorley and even about Perbula and Will Levis. Like none of those three are like prototypical NFL kind of passers, right? And Aller has not yet proven himself to be that, but that was the idea of Drew Aller,
right?
And it's like gotten Penn State nowhere. And in the meantime, also they brought in like a bit of a gimmicky offensive coordinator whose like greatest successes as a play caller offensively came when he was like running 2 quarterback systems with guys who could scoot and run around a little bit, and Jalen Daniels and Jason Bean. And it's like, I don't know if that coordinator and this quarterback, like marriage wise, like ever quite made sense. And of course you relitigate that now with the games of evidence that we have. I don't know if anybody brought that up in the moment, but I think you can talk about it now. And it just maybe is a square peg round hole situation for Penn State. I'm not entirely sure, but it's not like they have that different style of quarterback to even turn to now if they wanted to entertain that idea, because this backup is Ethan Grunkmeyer, who I think is more or less like the same style of quarterback, or at the very least, like he's not Will Levis or Bo Perbula, which is like to say they have to figure out a way to move forward with Koltonicky and Aller together to get Penn State to where it wants to go. But how could you possibly be confident in that with what we've seen the last 2 years?
So it's very, I think, similar to what Ohio State did after JT Barrett. I think a Trace McSorley JT Barrett comparison is pretty apt, right? It's a great leader, real run threat, certainly can throw, winning quarterback, right?
Tough winner.
Tough winner.
Yeah.
So Ohio State elevates past that. They decide, right, we're going to bring in Ryan Day. Urban Meyer says we've got to throw it better. But when they try to elevate, they go Dwayne Haskins, Heisman finalist, first-round draft pick. Justin Fields, Heisman finalist, first-round draft pick. CJ Stroud, Heisman finalist, first-round draft pick. Now, interestingly, none of those guys won a national title. And then when they got to Will Howard, who wasn't a Heisman finalist and wasn't a first-round draft pick, but was maybe closer to JT Barrett than any of those three were.
He was a tough winner.
He's a tough winner. They win a national championship.
Yeah.
So Penn State's attempt to elevate has not led to. They've only threw 2 quarterbacks, right? Because Sean Clifford played 4 years, and this is 3 years of Drew Aller. They're in the 7th season of trying to elevate past Trace McSorley. And they have in some ways, but they haven't in others. And again, it's not that Trace McSorley was out there beating top 10 teams either, but I think they maybe said themselves.
It was their best offenses, though. It wasn't even close when they had Joe Moorhead. Yeah.
100%. Better, and like a coordinator who fit the better skill around him in some ways, although Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, Luke Reynolds, these Trevor Pena, like they should have enough.
Yeah.
But they have not elevated the same way. And so now, and it's just, gosh, I could talk forever about attempts to elevate when you are what you are and you want to be more. And in the pursuit of more, you lose a bit of what you were. So the Penn State quarterback situation, the entire program at Wisconsin, if you are now Penn State, do you continue to try to elevate with guys that you think of as future NFL quarterbacks? Or should they be looking for their next Trace McSorley? Because who cares about being an NFL quarterback factory? We want to win a national championship, and maybe more of a run threat. Maybe would they be a better national championship contender with Bo Perbula, who is a heck of much more like Trace McSorley than Drew Aller is.
I think, probably, as crazy as that might sound. I think they would be, and I don't know. Is it a conversation about elevating relative to what you want in a quarterback, or is it more of a conversation of you have this very specific kind of offensive coordinator who I think probably needs a very specific type of quarterback for that system to run well, and you got the quarterback first and then the coordinator, and the two things haven't really melded together in the way you like them to. So then do you go to Koltonicky and say, like, what do you need? Like, and whatever that is, you seek that out on quarterback. It probably is somebody more like a Perbula or a Trace McSorley. I just don't think it's a statuesque pocket passer who like can't read a defense and won't push the ball downfield when the opportunities are there.
But and now we're back into. I could talk about this till 3 o'clock in the morning. At Ohio State, when you do that, you are doing it. So you start doing it. You know, Dwayne Haskins is recruited under Urban Meyer, but he's unleashed by Ryan Day. But then they changed
the offense.
They changed the offense to fit that. But then When Urban Meyer changed that offense, he could have been in fear of like, well, what are we going to do if Ryan Day leaves? We're changing the offense and we have a quarterback now to fit Ryan Day. But what are we going to do when Ryan Day leaves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead, Ryan Day becomes the head coach. And that offense is never going to leave because it's Ryan Day's offense.
Right.
This is not James Franklin's offense. James Franklin certainly has some ideas about things, and he's an offensive-minded head coach, but he has had various coordinators who have done things various ways.
Yep.
So the minute you get an Andy Kotelnicki quarterback, Andy Kotelnicki is going to go be the head coach at Pitt.
What? Yeah.
Sorry, Nar Dog. Lost a big lead at Louisville. And then now what do you have? Now you have an Andy Kotelnicki quarterback without an Andy Kotelnicki offense, which becomes the difficult thing of when you're trying to find an offensive identity, but your offensive identity is not built around the identity of the head coach.
But I just don't understand how it's been so difficult for Penn State to formulate an offensive identity over the course of multiple coordinators and multiple quarterbacks with different styles when they've done it on defense.
Isn't that crazy?
Doesn't make any sense to me.
Because you were saying, and this is a positive, you respect the fact that Penn State has managed to forge a defensive identity through multiple coordinators.
I think it is one of the more under-discussed things in college football, how consistently good Penn State's defense has been under what I think is now 4 different defensive coordinators for James Franklin, when James Franklin is not a defensive head coach. Like it's not a Saban Kirby Smart situation where the guy just comes in and runs that head coach's defense. He has been smart, I think, James Franklin, about finding defensive coordinators with a similar sort of like ideological thread, which again, maybe there's a lesson in there about how to handle your offense, but they've just not handled the offense the same way. And it's been a thing that's held back the program for 4 or 5 years now.
So I do think, again, this is not to make this not a James Franklin conversation, because he can't escape that. I'm sure he's not trying to escape that. He knows his record. And again, 4-21 against top 10 teams at Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, I really do think, because I thought this happened where the first time I really started talking about this was when Juice Williams in 2007 at Illinois beat Ohio State. I think he was a redshirt freshman maybe. And then Juice Williams wound up being the quarterback at Illinois for like another 3 years and never really got better. And they were so tied to Juice Williams because you had moments or a game where you said like, wow, that guy can get us to that point. And then you are waiting for it for the rest of his career. And the result is it bogs you down a little bit. And I do think Sean Clifford and Drew Aller have simultaneously allowed Penn State to be winning programs for the last 7 years. That's 7 years of 2 quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
They are key factors in why that Penn State program wins 10 games a year. But I also think they are key factors in why that Penn State program doesn't win these big games. Because when it comes down to how often does a game like this come down to our quarterback's got to make a play?
Often.
And how often do you feel like Penn State has the edge in that battle?
In games like this, hardly ever.
Hardly
ever.
Ever.
It's the high floor, low ceiling thing, right? Which is a fine territory to be in if all you ever want to do is win 10 games, right? But that's not what Penn State wants to do, especially this season. This is the biggest sort of like magnifying glass, I guess, all that's been under, because Penn State has not really ever had the national championship expectations that it had coming into this season. But this issue is nothing new. There has always been a bit of a cap on that team.
Yeah.
That I do think people have attributed to James Franklin. I'm not saying it's been unfair, but it's also a quarterback conversation. And it always has been. Because
you're the head coach, you're in charge of everything. If you've created a situation of high floor, low ceiling quarterbacks, you're responsible.
Sure, it's you made it, yeah.
But there also sometimes it's sort of an in-game situation. James Franklin as a coach for 3.5 hour situation, and James Franklin didn't throw that pick.
Right. So,
and there's just been enough circumstances where you can feel that a little bit, and it is not a I don't know that it's not a hopeless situation for Penn State, but at some point you start waiting for something different to happen. And so the loss itself here, I'm going to have a trivia question for you in a second. The loss itself, you lost to Oregon. does not really do much of anything to Penn State. Certainly it will come into play in terms of who's going to make the Big Ten championship game.
Well, I don't know. I think largely you're right, but doesn't it? I think people came into this season curious about whether or not Penn State was going to take the next step, which probably has to include winning one of its games against Oregon or Ohio State.
But also I think 10-2 Penn State that loses to Ohio State and Oregon goes to the playoff.
You sure?
If Indiana's Indiana, that's a good win. But also, are they going to beat Indiana?
Right.
So, it's not the loss itself, but it's the continued. It's because you try to be like, listen, man, they're really good. They really are.
Mm-hmm.
And they lost in double overtime. They rallied. They didn't slink away. Their own fans were booing them justifiably. Yeah. And they found a way. There's a lot there. But also they lost, and they made the critical mistake at the end. But they have to fight through that. And I don't know. It's not the loss. It's the continued beating your head against the same wall, against the ceiling. You're hitting your head on the ceiling of college football. Yeah. And we sort of talk, the preseason is all about, well, just because you haven't done it doesn't mean you can't do it. But every time you have a chance to do it and don't is another block that you now have to overcome. So now when they come to Columbus, when they host Indiana, this Oregon loss, Drew Aller throwing a pick to end the game, is going to be another thing they have to overcome.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd feel great about 10-2 Penn State definitely being in. To be honest, I think we're
going to beat undefeated Indiana after Indiana goes.
It's Indiana, yeah. I think Indiana is now Penn State's best friend because nothing I saw today makes me think Penn State can go to Columbus and beat Ohio State. I definitely think they can beat Indiana at home, but what's that going to mean? I don't know.
Don't you disrespect Indiana?
I'm not. It's not about what I think. It's what the people who make the playoff bracket think. And also, they're not supposed to take into account what they think Penn State might do when it gets to the playoff. But I also wouldn't be surprised if that's a hurdle they feel like they need to overcome as they're discussing Penn State. You need to show that you're a championship caliber team at some point. And Penn State has yet to do that.
Well, but I don't know if you have to show you're a championship caliber team because there's all kinds of championship caliber teams. There's all kinds of non-championship caliber teams that get in the playoff. Right, SMU.
We don't know that. We've had 1 year of a playoff.
SMU wasn't a championship caliber team.
Sure, yeah. So last year, that's who was available to put in the playoff. Well, we don't know what this year is going to look like.
The SEC is a muck. So it's Indiana at Penn State on November 8th. When you think about the Penn State schedule the rest of the way, and it's you don't want to schedule or game yourself into oblivion, but at UCLA versus Northwestern the next 2 weeks, which is again not really an opportunity to impress anybody. At Iowa on October 18th, and then both Ohio State and Penn State have an off week before they face each other in Columbus on November 1st. They get Ohio State and Indiana back-to-back.
Yeah, and Iowa is not a cakewalk, as we saw today with Indiana.
Yeah, so this is one of those. They also could get trapped in the Iowa's good enough to beat Penn State, but not good enough for anybody to respect the win if Penn State gets it. They also have Nebraska at home in the second last week, but it's they're not getting in at 9-3. So they've got to beat one of the two of Indiana or Ohio State and then see what happens. I still think doing that, unless Indiana falls off a cliff, you beat Nebraska, you win at Iowa. Let's say you beat Indiana at home and this isn't a double overtime game. I think that matters too, especially Oregon's going to be a playoff team. You have a double overtime loss to a playoff team. You're competitive in Columbus. I think being competitive would be much different than losing by 30 in Columbus.
I agree. 2
competitive losses to 2 playoff teams, 10-2 Penn State. I think it's in good shape. But then even that's almost like them maxing out the rest of the year because that did not look like a team that's going to go in and win in Columbus.
Did not look like a team that's going to go win in Columbus. So I think 10-2 at the moment feels like best case scenario. 10-2 could very likely mean you're going to the playoff and opening on the road.
Right.
Yeah, it's not it's Penn State did not have to come into the season and go undefeated and win a national championship for it to be considered a success. But 10-2, I don't think was on the docket either, and it's just it's hard to not feel like that's what Penn State's staring down based off the way it played today.
It feels like the ceiling for the season is a 10-2 team that nobody believes in going into the playoff.
Right.
That they're the 9 seed going to number 8 Texas A&M, and the entire discussion for 14 days is well, James Franklin's 4-23 against, like, can they do it now? Why would it happen now? It hasn't happened. As opposed to, and again, why it's not the loss. You do, at some point, you have to vanquish the discussion. I think you have to vanquish the discussion before you can even win the games. Now, to be fair, that's where Ohio State was last year. Ohio State, going into the Tennessee game, they had to vanquish the discussion, and they vanquished the discussion, and then they vanquished everybody else.
Right.
So Penn State would have the opportunity to go on the road to College Station and beat number 8 Texas A&M, vanquish the discussion, and then go try to beat the number 1 team in the country in the quarterfinals, just like Ohio State did. They would have that opportunity. And a year ago, I'm not so sure if everybody was certain that Ohio State was going to do that. So that's the best case scenario at Penn State right now. But in the offseason, you and I thought Penn State was going to, we thought Penn State would win this game in the offseason.
Yes.
Then the way Oregon played this year, the way Penn State played with its food and against 3 mediocre teams, we had certainly doubts about Penn State winning this game much more than we did. In the offseason, we thought, man, this is going to be, we thought this was going to be the coming out party for Penn State. Beat Oregon at home and then go after the races.
Yeah, it was like twofold, right? Like thinking Penn State would kind of hit the ground running with all the talent they had coming back. It's actually interesting if you look at like the returning production, how many of those teams aren't playing that well. Maybe that's a thing. But yeah, that Penn State would hit the ground running, that Penn State would be playing angry. Neither one of those two things came to fruition. And Oregon was a team that was angry, and Oregon was a team that like kind of hit the ground running this season. So I still picked Penn State to win this game, but I picked Oregon to cover because I thought ultimately the environment would push Penn State to a win. But I'm not surprised that like Oregon was game for the moment. It's just a little damning that it looked more ready for the moment than Penn State did.
We saw Dan Lanning after the game on TV. How fired up he was.
Yep.
Can you imagine if that had been James Franklin? Fired up. Our quarterback is an absolute all-star. This is for all the Penn State fans out there.
Yeah. And instead you get a post-game quote from James Franklin that I feel like I've heard from him a million times. Quote, "We got to find ways to win those games. I get it."
Which is a quote about quarterback play. Because if you're going to come in and talk about we need to cover better, we need to block better, we got to find a way. Find a way is code for quarterback play.
Mostly, I think. I don't know. Oftentimes, in this specific situation, I think it is. I don't know that there's much. Like Oregon ended up with 424 yards of offense. I don't know that you come away like feeling like the defense let them down here. And even like whatever.
424 to 276, Oregon outgained.
Yeah. The Jim Knowles thing that like was an issue for him at Ohio State was like in these big games, his defense has never got any stops. Like they gave up 1 touchdown in the fourth quarter. So yeah, it's mostly a quarterback thing.
But I do think there's a difference here for all the things that Penn State did not get out of this game. I do think there's a somewhat significant difference between Penn State loses 17-3 getting booed off the field and Penn State loses in double overtime.
I generally think you're right. The very specific way it ended in double overtime
I know.
Makes it a little more difficult to swallow, I would imagine, for Penn State fans.
What if in attempting to protect Drew Aller and this program from a horrific ending, what if James Franklin had just told Drew Aller to run backwards 40 yards and take a safety like Fernando Mendoza did for Indiana, and we'll just take the loss, but it'll be a moral victory. We're playing for the moral victory. We just don't want you to throw a game-ending pick.
I would have respected it. I want to look now.
And that's the only turnover in that game.
Yes.
Is the last play of the game is the only turnover.
Penn State's first overtime possession. They ran 3 plays, started with a pass, run, and that was it. And then they came out throwing. Yeah. I think if I don't know if we're having like this specific conversation, if Penn State came out and like ran the ball and Katron Allen fumbled and Oregon recovered it on the first play, or if they got past the first down, got in the scoring position, and whatever, Drew Aller throws an incomplete pass to end the game out of the back of the end zone or something. It was like all the goodwill that felt like it was being built up toward the end of that game, almost whether Penn State won or lost, was undone by that very specific ending.
You know what would have been a great outcome for Penn State, which is what we thought was going to happen, which is Dan Lanning, after the first touchdown, goes for two.
Yeah.
So Penn State rallies, 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, ties it, loses the coin toss, scores on its first possession, and then Oregon scores and goes for 2 and wins by a point.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes down to like Penn State lost the coin toss and Oregon got to go second, and they made a bold call. And then it'd be like, oh, we fought down to the wire. And James Franklin would be like, we'll take that, actually. That actually would have been, we would have taken that.
Yeah.
James, would you have taken a 1-point loss if Dan Lanning had gone for 2? Can I give you a trivia question here on our post-game show? This is Doug. This is Bill. We are the Bill and Doug Show. We do a lot of Ohio State coverage on this channel, on these podcast feeds, but we also do some national college talk. We do national picks every Friday. We do a playoff bracket every Tuesday. We continue to have opinions about Northern college football and national college football. So we appreciate everybody who's joining us here. We still feel like we have 4 feet covering Ohio State right now, but we still have a lot of interest and knowledge, we feel like, about teams like Oregon and Penn State. We're at Big Ten Media Days. We've been covering these teams. We've been studying these teams all off season. So we have opinions.
And I think we're always interested in how the Big Ten is sort of establishing its hierarchy and then comparing that to how people talk about the SEC.
And we're going to talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
Of the top 17 teams in the preseason AP poll, here on as we hit midnight and turn from September 27th to September 28th, how many of those 17 are still undefeated?
Oh, from the preseason?
From the preseason poll.
4?
3. Ohio State, Oregon, and Miami.
Yeah.
Which we started saying 2 weeks ago we thought were the 3 best teams in college football.
I think that is borderline definitive at this point.
I'll run quickly through 1 through 17, their number of losses. Number 1, this is preseason AP poll. Texas, 1 loss. Penn State, 1 loss. Ohio State, none. Clemson, 3. Georgia, 1. Notre Dame, 2. Oregon, 0. Alabama, 1. LSU, 1. Took that today. Miami, 0. Arizona State, 1. Illinois, 1. South Carolina, 2. Michigan, 1. Florida, 3. SMU, 2. And Kansas State, 3. So, and this is...
I saw you looking up Kansas State earlier. I was like, what's he doing that for?
Yeah. Okay. Just piling on Chris Kleiman. It's like everybody who thought they were going to be good. They're not. I do... For the people who yearn for the 4-team playoff truthers, for the people who yearn for like, oh man, like, wouldn't that be great? It's such a, like, I like that we've had, because these teams are losing to each other. Texas lost to Ohio State.
Right.
Georgia lost to Alabama. Penn State lost to Oregon. Like, we're making these teams lose, right? But I just don't, like, I don't want everybody, like, I don't want all these teams to be out of it. You know, like, I've passed that Rubicon. Like, that's not how I think anymore. That I don't think like, oh, good. You know, whatever. South Carolina, you have 2 losses. You should have your season be over already, right? So,
can we be honest and say that we're happy that Clemson season's over already?
Yeah, come on, okay. Dabo. So you got 3 in September. You're game over, baby.
Yeah.
But this is where the sport is. But the thing that I was very interested in tonight, and we will be honest, we didn't want to do. How big's my TV? Do you think Ariana Grande is on it right now? This isn't real, is it? This is a repeat.
It's a repeat. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably like a 40 or 50 inch TV.
Are you going to go see the second Wicked?
Yeah, probably.
Did you go see the first one?
I didn't see it in theaters. I watched it at home.
Did you like it?
I did like it, like, reluctantly. I wasn't interested in watching it. My wife made me watch it. I was like, oh, this is pretty good.
I don't think it's for me. I'm going to skip it.
Yeah. Smart.
We didn't want to split screen it. It's a big TV, but even on the YouTube, the 2 box, it doesn't fill the whole screen. I wish they could 2 box a little bit better. So we kept the 1 box. We had Oregon, Penn State, and then we had, on your iPad, we had Alabama, Georgia. So we can't pretend we watched Alabama, Georgia as closely. But the one thing that we took away from Alabama, Georgia is they made ridiculous mistakes and kept dropping touchdown passes.
Every time I would hear like Chris Fowler's voice level raise, it would draw my attention to the screen, And it was just like, oh, someone from Alabama or Georgia is running scot-free through the middle of the defense, either on a run play or on a pass play where that person who's running scot-free is about to drop a walk-in touchdown.
Yes. So the thing that we can't and that we are prepared to push back against is, we had mentioned this back in the era when it was the SEC and college football itself was defined by Nick Saban. It was defensive football, and 9-3 games were the best kind of game that you could play. Low scoring was cool. Now, for whatever reason, everybody in the SEC has forgotten how to play defense. And so now it's like, let's just chuck it around, and this is great ball. This is mistake-filled, sloppy football. I've used the term section. It's like Maction. It's exciting. It doesn't mean it's good. It's close. There were a lot of close games in the SEC today. Auburn, Texas A&M was close. Ole Miss, LSU was close. Tennessee, Mississippi State was close. Alabama, Georgia was close. Was any of it good? Was any of it good? Because I did think you can sit here and be like, oh, Drew Aller. I don't know. I'm not so. If Drew Aller is playing the Georgia defense today instead of the Oregon defense, Georgia has forgotten how to play defense. They made Ty Simpson look like the Heisman front runner. But there's just guys running free. So we're looking at two things. A, there's guys dropping touchdown passes in the Alabama-Georgia game. But B, there are just people running free. There are safeties taking banana angles. There are broken coverages. And you aren't seeing, I don't think, at the highest level of the Big Ten games, I don't think you see as many defensive mistakes like that. And the result can be some people, first blush, might think, oh, the Big Ten stinks. In comparison, I think a lot of what the SEC in a game like this gets, and it's the same thing of the game last year with Alabama and Georgia.
Just lower scoring.
That was exciting, but not well played, and it's busted coverages all over the place. I think Oregon, Penn State was a tighter played game, and Alabama and Georgia let it get loose, and also Gunnar Stockton's still not good.
Yeah, I think it was a tighter played game, and like there's pretty direct comparisons you can make between like Ty Simpson and Dante Moore and Gunnar Stockton and Drew Aller. Gunnar Stockton was 13 of 20 for 130 yards. Drew Aller was 14 of 25 for 137 yards. Just not good enough to lead their team to a win. And like the bulk of Gunnar Stockton's passing yards came on like 2 plays. Not helped by the drop that they had, nor was Ty Simpson helped by the drop that Ryan Williams had. But it was a game where like Bama like kind of could throw it but not run it, and Georgia could run it but not throw it. So it's not even like balanced in that way. So like, I don't know. I think you can get a little too caught up in the aesthetics of things sometimes, because it's not like, I mean, Penn State-Oregon was 3-3 at halftime. Let's not pretend like it was beautiful football, but tighter is probably the right word. Like a game that was less about like mistakes, I think, than maybe the Alabama-Georgia game was.
I have a name for, this is my nickname for Gunnar Stockton. Dixie Drew.
I don't mind that.
You were looking up at times. There was like a 4th and 1 call where it was like a gotta have it play for Georgia, and they like did a little flip sideways handoff to a running back and made the play come down to whether a receiver on the edge can make a block, and the receiver could not have looked less interested in blocking.
It was like 3rd and 9 on like you're down 3 at midfield, 3rd and 9, and your play was, I'm gonna throw a swing pass 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage to my running back, and then my receivers will show no interest in blocking. Yeah. Interesting decision.
And it's just like, remember when everyone was like, oh, Georgia stole Josh McCray from Illinois. What are they going to do? Josh McCray, 6 carries for 15 yards against Bama.
Zach Branch, 3 catches, 35 yards. He was supposed to reinvigorate the Georgia offense.
It's very conflicting when Georgia and Alabama play each other, because on some level you win no matter what, and on some level you lose no matter what. But last year at this time, the thing that was making me wave my sword the most was when people were coming out of the game saying like, oh, Bama, Georgia.
Here's your national title game. Yeah.
Here is your. And by our recollection, it was not the national title game.
It was not.
I hope people are not coming out of Gunnar Stockton, Ty Simpson, drop touchdown passes, broken coverages, sloppy bonanza, and saying that's your national title game. And I also like you just, the thing that is going to bother me the most on Monday is if the conclusion of this is like Penn State stinks, they can't win a big game, Drew Aller stinks, but somehow Bama, Georgia is what college football is all about.
I admittedly was not perusing Twitter or X much during the game to see what those reactions would be. But the little bit that I did see, I don't know that I got a whiff of that really. So maybe we'll avoid it.
Do you think it's because the South has come back down to earth after 2 Northern national titles, or because actually that game just stunk?
Both, probably. Yeah, I think both.
Also, remember how LSU is going to win the national title?
Nope.
Remember how everybody said that? I lost my bet with our friend Connor from Saturday Down South. I said LSU would start. Well, I didn't lose the bet yet. I said LSU would start 3-3. They're already 4-1. Congratulations to them because Clemson stinks like hot garbage. But he said LSU would win the national title. And like, that's not.
Our pal Ari Wasserman has Ole Miss 4 in his updated top 10 ranking. So maybe I spoke too soon.
He spent at least 11 seconds on that in between trying to figure out how much Drew Aller's chain cost.
Penn State 9.
Penn State 9. Because I'm sure that Ole Miss would take Oregon into double overtime, don't you think?
Yes.
I mean, how could Oregon handle Saxby Chambliss? What's his name?
Trinidad Chambliss.
I mean, there's no
the best quarterback in the SEC is a transfer from Division II.
Yeah. So I mean, how that's just how SEC ball works. So and I did bring the swords into the basement. So Indiana, I do think
Son of the North, by the way, Trinidad Chambliss.
Oh, for real?
Yep.
Where's he from?
Michigan.
Where's Ferris State?
Michigan.
How is he at Ole Miss?
I don't know. Money?
Is it because there's so many good quarterbacks? He should be at, where could he be? Because we already went through this on our Substack show. We did all 18 teams in the Big Ten, and the only 3, he should be at Wisconsin. The only 3 places in the Big Ten that you determined are really like not happy with quarterback play are Northwestern, UCLA, and Wisconsin. But UCLA went and tried and got Nico this offseason. Northwestern went and tried and got Preston Stone this offseason. And I don't know.
Someone in the Big Ten got a Ferris State offensive lineman. Was it Iowa? It was Iowa.
Oh, should they have gotten Trinidad Chambliss instead of Mark Renowski?
They should have watched the QB too.
Watch the QB. That's how all great scouting happens. You grab you're scouting one guy in film, and then you're like, who's that guy? How did nobody who's that guy Trinidad Chambliss? Only the great genius that is Lane Kiffin. They did like a whole 60-minute mini Lane Kiffin documentary this week. I didn't watch it.
I didn't watch it either. Don't care.
Won't be watching that. Indiana, did you think it was a good day for the Big Ten? Because in the noon window, we were paying attention to Minnesota Rutgers, which was just like a fun middle tier. Like there's enough players in this game. Darius Taylor is still out for Minnesota running back, but there's still enough guys in that game who could make plays. You had Illinois USC, where Illinois bounces back from the drubbing by Indiana and plays, I think, a pretty darn good game at home against USC. Tries to give it away, but then after they gave it away, then they marched for the game-winning field goal and kicked it a 40-yard field goal in the last play of the game to win that. You had Indiana, Iowa at the same time as Ohio State, Washington. And again, Indiana off a huge win goes to Iowa. Kurt Signetti all week was it felt like he had no respect for Illinois last week before, during, or after the game. And he had tremendous respect for Iowa all week. And then Iowa almost beats them. Ohio State plays a very mature game on the road at Washington. Hems in Damon Williams, looks like, I think, the best team in the country. And then you get this Oregon-Penn State game. Is it a good weekend for the Big Ten?
Yeah, I thought so. It was good. Like I think like Penn State-Oregon had to be as competitive as it was. So that was good. I think Ohio State showing was pretty darn good out in Washington. Illinois bouncing back and thus like fortifying Indiana a little bit, I think is good for the Big Ten. And then I would hope at the very least that like Big Ten fans have a little bit of grace for Indiana not blowing Iowa's doors off when I think every team in the Big Ten has gone to Kinnick and left feeling terrible about itself at some point, right? So we were talking about like Iowa's superpowers turning other teams into Iowa, and that's what it did to Indiana today, but he got out of there with a win. Kinnick's the kind of place where like it doesn't matter what it looks like as long as you get out of there with a W. And Indiana did. So yeah, I think it was a really good day for the Big Ten, actually.
It's just
I don't know who won the UCLA Northwestern game, but one of those teams got their first Big Ten win, so that's nice. Good for them.
Northwestern was ahead 17-0 and then almost blew it, but won 17-14.
Beautiful.
So, and I know I saw at least one UCLA writer asking if UCLA is staring down the barrel of 0-12.
That felt like their one opportunity to get a win.
Yeah,
I was asking you whether or not a team has ever fired its head coach and then fired the interim coach.
It's not good. It's not good. So a good day, and then we just have to, I think Texas A&M might be a competitive team. Like I think
I like A&M. I very much respect Oklahoma's defense. We'll have to see how they navigate the world without John Mateer for a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Still think Texas is dangerous. We'll see if Arch Manning starts to build some momentum now that he mean mugged the Sam Houston State defender. LSU doesn't scare me.
No.
Ole Miss outside of Oxford doesn't really scare me. I think like Alabama's demise was slightly overstated. Whether or not even you think like Alabama is a championship quality team, I do kind of feel like Alabama is going to be in the playoff mix. So there are Southern teams to respect.
Missouri is weird.
Missouri's
They're
interesting.
5-0. They blew the doors off UMass today.
Do you think Florida State's a fraud, or they get caught in a look ahead spot?
I think Florida State's a fraud.
Okay. I think they might have got caught in a look ahead spot, but ask me again next week when they play Miami.
So Missouri, Alabama. So Bama, I mean, like, can I make this bet with you?
Mm-hmm.
You're in on Bama. I'm out on Bama.
I'm just not all the way out on Bama. So I guess that means by default I'm in.
You're right. You're in compared to me.
Yeah.
Next week, home versus Vanderbilt. The week after that, at Missouri.
Not a gimme. We know that Vanderbilt's not a gimme.
I will bet you they lose at least one of those games. I mean, and we don't have to bet. I am declaring I think Bama will lose at least one of those two games to Vanderbilt and Missouri.
Yeah, you're probably right.
And then everybody will be like, oh, Missouri. Oh, Diego Pavia. It's Vanderbilt. So I don't know. But we just have to live in that world. But I'm not all the way back there on Bama. And just like, again, nobody's better at the transitive property than the SEC, but like we're getting pretty good at it. Arkansas probably should have beat Ole Miss 2 weeks ago. They fumbled, I think, at the end of the game when they had a chance to win it.
Mm-hmm.
Should have beaten Ole Miss. Ole Miss beats number 4 LSU today. Notre Dame cooks that hog, man. Notre Dame went down and took apart Arkansas today. So
4.5 point spread, and they won by $1 billion.
So you want a transitive property on LSU lost to Ole Miss, who should have lost to Arkansas, who got their doors blown off by Notre Dame, right?
Yeah.
So we've got to look for comparisons when we can find them, and we just would like to point anybody to that in case anybody else is trying to point you to, the SEC. There's nothing like trying to get through an SEC schedule.
What do you think Georgia's going to do? Georgia now has Kentucky at Auburn, Ole Miss off, and then Florida.
So listen, I've sort of been holding on to Georgia because I don't know who else to hold on to in the SEC. And as I understand it, the SEC at least has to get one team in the playoff.
That is correct.
But Georgia, and this is where I think they were last year, except Gunnar Stockton is even a step down from Carson Beck. First national championship for Georgia. One of the best college defenses we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Second national championship for Georgia. A quarterback who would not let them lose. A veteran quarterback who would not let them lose. They do not have either of those things right now. And they also don't have Brock Bowers. They also don't have Ladd McConkey. I do not know how many skill guys they have that scare you. Their quarterback, I don't think anybody believes in the quarterback.
That's a bigger thing.
The quarterback had a brief respite because he threw a 4th and 10 touchdown against Tennessee and then converted a 2-point conversion. And then Tennessee missed a field goal at the end of the game, or Georgia, frankly. I mean, that's a miracle throw by Gunnar Stockton, which he does get credit for, but it's a stinking miracle.
Yep.
And then Tennessee misses a field goal in the last play of the game, or Georgia, was that their most recent game? They would be looking at 2 losses in a row, right?
Georgia, Tennessee. Yeah, they beat Tennessee and then they were off. Yeah.
So Georgia should be on a 2-game winning streak. I mean, I've had Georgia in the playoff. I'm not convinced that Georgia's a playoff team.
I want to look at ESPN's college football playoff picks.
Should I bail? Do I have to be in on Bama in order to bail on Georgia, or can I bail on both?
You can bail on both.
God, the SEC stinks.
Everyone, I'm looking at ESPN's playoff picks. Everyone has Ohio State number 1, except for Bill Connolly, who has Oregon 1 and Ohio State 2. But everyone had, never mind. Bill Connolly lost me by putting Ole Miss at 3.
Okay. We need to only discuss serious people. But like, for instance, and like you've had Georgia as your top SEC team in the last couple of weeks. Who will you have as your top SEC team in your playoff bracket on Tuesday? Bama? You're going to have Bama.
No.
They don't have an SEC loss. They only have a Florida State loss.
I might go A&M.
Okay.
Like A&M didn't look spectacular today, but it won again at least.
I think Texas. I think waiting for Texas to come back around still makes a lot of sense.
What is Texas's deal? So Texas was off today, right?
And then you said
they
Texas
come back and play
Florida,
and then Red River against a mid-tierless Oklahoma, more than likely.
And then they still play Georgia this year, right?
Yeah, they play Georgia in November.
Okay.
November.
And then A&M at the end of the year could be it was a gigantic game last year, but a gigantic game again this year.
Yeah, at Georgia, November 15th.
Okay. All right. So I think a good day for the Big Ten.
I would agree. Yeah.
And a tough day, like when you're 4-21 against top 10 teams, like moral victories aren't going to get you anywhere. But it simultaneously could have been worse and also couldn't have been worse, which is the point you've been making the whole time. And it's just hard. It is also, there are two things here that are true about Penn State and Drew Aller in the end. One is the Drew Aller box score is the Drew Allerest box score ever. I mean, this is exactly like you look up and it's like, hey, did Penn State play like a barn burner in like a game that everybody was watching? And Drew Aller, who people talk about as a first round pick, what was his line? 14 of 25 for 137.
Yeah,
of course it was.
It's like the old what was that joke about like it's the inverse of like the old Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout jokes, where it's like Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout did something that hasn't been done in baseball in 100 years, and the Angels lost 4-3.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. It was a great matchup at the peak of college football, and the quarterback averaged 4 yards of completion or whatever. So we had that line that's just a floor line, and then he made a killer mistake at the end.
Yeah.
So all right, that'll do it for our post game show. So I don't know, Bill. Like, we are open to. We've been doing an Ohio State post game show as soon as the OSU game ends. Next week, Ohio State is a primetime game, but we are open to, I would say, especially if Ohio State's not a primetime game, but if there are primetime things happening that are worthy of it, for us hopping on and maybe doing another thing like this.
Yeah, I think as warranted at the very least, but if people want us to do it every week regardless, I think we can maybe do that. It'll be harder when Ohio State plays in primetime, but I don't know if that'll happen again after next week's game against Minnesota.
So if you are an Ohio State fan that tuned in for this post-game shows, thank you so much for being here. If you're a fan of another team or just a college football fan in general, we will continue to provide some of this content. So if you're not as interested in the nitty-gritty of Ohio State, although Ohio State continues to be a fascinating lens in which to view college football, they are the defending national champs. They are the number one team in the country. They do affect everybody else. Tuesday evening, we put it up. It is our college football playoff bracket, where we change our bracket every week, trying to anticipate what we think it would be at the end of the year. It's not us doing a current poll. It's us changing our minds of who we think the 12 teams will be at the end of the year. That goes up every Tuesday night. And then every Friday we do our national college picks. And actually we did a little bit better this week, Bill. We've had a couple rough weeks. But like, for instance, I picked Oregon to win by 1. You picked Penn State to win by 1, and they were tied at the end of regulation. So no one picked overtime. But other than picking overtime, we like kind of middled the Penn State-Oregon game pretty well.
But I get the W for the against the spread pick.
Yeah, we both get the W for that. But then also you picked Bama and I picked Georgia. So that's what I get for being a dog lover. I'm going to hoist myself on my own patoot for picking the Dogs. All right. Thanks to you guys for being here. We love talking college ball. We love talking Northern college ball. We love talking about Ohio State. You can also check out our Substack. You can go check it out for free with a little quick, like week-long subscription there, right? You get to hang out for a little bit if you want to check it out.
There's a free trial. I think it's 7 days. Or you can just like get the emails and decide over time if it's for you or not.
Yeah. You can sign up for free. Yeah. Then just like see what we're putting out there. We do two premium shows there a week. One on Wednesday, one on Sunday, and a lot of written content. That's Bill and Doug OSU.substack.com. All right. Thanks to you guys for joining us. Get this hat off my head from my basement. This is a sword. Yeah, do you want to hold? How often have you held the sword in person?
I don't know. I think once. They have a lot of weight to them.
More than you would think.
Yeah.
And you are a stronger man than I. I have a noodle arm, so sometimes it's hard to hold the sword. But it's a 2-sword Saturday, Bill. When you get 2 games on a Saturday night like that.
It is. You can do some damage with this thing. It's a heavy blunt object.
It is a heavy blunt object.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks to you guys for being here. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was the Bill and Doug Show.